Let me give you one example of this. My favorite example is physicians, but the easiest example is professors. How many will admit that the most autonomy-obsessed class of people is professors? And in a way, despite every effort to pad their resumes, probably the most unproductive class of people would be professors. How many of y'all students would? Yeah, that's probably true. And, and when our distinguished lawyers from DC come to visit us to help us out with this, I'm sure they think just because you people don't really work. Let's strike that from me. So it used to be we thought professors had a right to their moods, and so we tolerated a good deal of professorial moodiness. And why do we do that? We allow professors to drive off students and to be too messed up to publish much. Why do we allow that? We had two reasons. We didn't think professors could help it. We thought they were screwed up by nature, and what can you do about that? And we also bought the claim that all human beings, all persons, and profound people especially, have a right to their natural moods as an indispensable clue to who they are. Even bad moods, especially, such as anxiety, might lead us in the direction to the truth about being human. But what if professors could easily find a safe and reliable chemical remedy for the moodiness? Deans might start to say on evaluation day, we'll keep you around only if you brighten up. Get down to the drugstore, brighten up, you can stay. The professor might object. I have a right to my moods. They lead me to the truth. But the dean would patiently respond, like deans do, always think professors are idiots. Moods, studies show, are nothing but random collections of chemicals, and we free beings aren't bound by any natural reason to privilege one collection of chemicals over another. So we have no reason not to choose the moods that lead us to being productive. And we have no reason why we shouldn't call those moods true. We don't know which moods are true moods, so let's call the productive moods true moods. That way we're on the same, the deans like to stay on the same page now, thinking outside the box, on the same page now, 20 other dean cliches. All right, so autonomy is the justification for mine being able to enhance my moods because there's nothing wrong with that. But one more time, my autonomy is not going to be enough to trump productivity in the free choice of moods. So the truth is, if we don't know an understanding of freedom higher than productivity and utterly empty autonomy, in fact, our freedom has no future in the biotechnological age. Everything will be chained to productivity. And I don't know that much about BYU, but if you look at universities closely, that is already happening. What biotechnology will really enhance that. So what to do about this? I have no real solution except to say that clearly secular universities have no easy way out of this now. Secular great books colleges are better than secular public universities because they can take the question seriously, but there's too politically correct or privileged answers. And so in a certain way, the slackers of the elite private universities are worse than the productive beings of the state universities because at least they're using their time well. So how many of y'all know that, if you're a smart parent these days, you're going to choose between State U and, I better not fill in any particular name, elite slacker Eastern University with high SAT scores, you're better off choosing State U because your kid will learn something and be less morally corrupted. You might be morally corrupted in the dorms, you won't be morally corrupted as much in the classroom. But the third possibility is religiously oriented colleges, and they're the only ones who take the idea that dignity has a real content above productivity. And so the question is, how can religious colleges have to take dignity seriously as something real, but in such a way that they're doing more, I think, than preaching to the converted. So maybe the great task of our center is to show that what we believe, we Catholics and we Mormons believe, is not only true by revelation, but is actually true simply that the psychological arguments of our opponents fall short on their own terms, that anyone with eyes to see can see that there's more to being human than productivity and empty autonomy of trying to define yourself out of nothing. Thank you.
Professor Lawler, the microphone is being transferred to Brant Bishop. Brant is an alumnus of BYU and of Harvard Law School. He is a founding director of the John Adams Center, which is sponsoring these discussions. And we'll invite him to comment and raise some questions about what Professor Lawler has said. Then we'll all get to join in after that.
Is this on? So I'm the distinguished lawyer from Washington, D.C. that comes to tell the professors that they don't know how to work. In seriousness, though, what I would like to say in answer to what Professor Lawler has said is not by way of disagreement, but by way of an introduction to how the LDS community in particular and an institution such as BYU can contribute to the discussion about how to cure this howling existentialism that results from university students who show up at a place not knowing who they are and leave a place convinced more than ever that they don't have any stable identity. In the case of the LDS community, well, let me back up. Professor Lawler, I think, rightly diagnoses the problem with a disordered notion of freedom that leaves us lonely and disoriented and even lost because it detaches us from the conditions or the context of our own freedom and makes us think that we're free to remake ourselves and remake the entire world according to our own desires, and yet leaves us without any information about what our desires should be or what our identities are that we should structure our worlds around. In this regard, Mormons have a valuable insight to make that's rooted in revealed religion in the Book of Mormon, but is also something that can be articulated in a way that's accessible and I think resonates with people that share some of our faith, such as faithful Catholics who care about the content of their characters. And that is that instead of understanding the notion of freedom in the way that is taught in terms of merely productivity or autonomy, Mormons have access to, and other religious faiths have access to, similar notions that are more richly endowed with the content that can provide guidance for people to steer clear of the howling existentialism. And that is the doctrine that we sometimes refer to as moral agency. And in the case of the LDS community, we have valuable contributions to make to people outside of the LDS community to understand that what the world has called freedom is missing an important component. In our case, we can resort to the Book of Mormon in 2nd Nephi to understand what the conditions of freedom are, or the conditions of moral agency. In 2nd Nephi, for example, we're taught that moral agency, or that our freedom, arises in the first instance only because there is a law given with moral alternatives. In the absence of a moral law, our freedom consists merely in the choice between vanilla and chocolate. There's no significance beyond our tastes when it comes to choosing which